Hi, I'm Marcia Franklin. I'm a producer and host at Idaho Public Television, and I've been here since 1990, so over 30 years.
My first question is, tell me a little bit about your story, how you got here, maybe your career path.
I grew up in Washington, D.C. I was very fortunate to grow up in a city like that because there was lots of history all around me and literature, and my parents were also interested in that. So from a very young age, I was interested in learning about the past, about what was going on in news during that time, because the Vietnam War was going on and other, Watergate and other really high intensity news things. So right from birth, I was interested in people's stories. And I just had a regular education, and I went to a liberal arts college that you couldn't, there was no journalism major or anything like that. And so really, I did some internships when I was in college at TV stations. And when I graduated, I thought, I really, really am interested in this TV thing, and maybe working in children's television. But there weren't jobs, and so I went to California, and I just begged for a job in television. And I started as a shipping clerk at the public TV station in San Francisco. I would ship books out, and then I became the assistant to the news director. So basically, I was a secretary and a production assistant, and then started getting some experience working on television shows. But I really did not have a lot of confidence. And I ran the intern program, and one of my interns came back from graduate school, and she said, "Marcia, you would love this." I got in and I went. And so I have a master's degree in journalism. And for me, that helped. That helped my confidence. And they assigned me to work for a TV station out of Washington, D.C. I was reporting for a TV station in North Dakota. I decided on a whim that I wanted to work in Montana or Idaho. And I got a job in Idaho Falls, Idaho. It was my first job at a commercial station, and NBC. And I very quickly realized that is not what I wanted to do. And so I came back to the public television family. I grew up on public television. I worked for PBS in San Francisco, and here now I've worked for public television for over 30 years in Idaho.
So you have your own show, correct, here?
I've had my own show for, since 1994.
And it's called Dialogue.
It's called Dialogue.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So Dialogue is an outgrowth of the fact that I used to work on our political program, which is called Idaho Reports, where we covered the legislature in those days every single day. And when the legislature stopped in March, I was a little bit bummed out because all the things that I saw pass, the bills and everything, we couldn't really follow up on. And there were so many more stories. So I asked if I could continue with a new show, and we ended up calling it Dialogue. And in those days, it was live, and people would call in with their questions about lots of different topics. Like one week I would do something on nuclear waste, and something else the next week on art. And so we would have a phone in from all over the state and interview guests. Eventually started concentrating much more on taped programs and programs with authors, because I've always loved to read. And so mostly what I do is I interview authors and historians. So I started my own show online called The 180. And that is where I interview people over Zoom about 180s that they've made in their life. So big changes, like we're all going through. Right. You got a show right now on extraordinary athletes with disabilities. So that's really cool.
Yeah, very neat.
And then I also work on our Idaho Experience show, which is a documentary series about Idaho history. So I've made special documentaries about mental health issues, human rights issues. I made a documentary about the astronaut Barbara Morgan. So, and this is an Emmy Award. This is what you get if you compete with your colleagues in this part of the country. And so I've been lucky enough to win.
Wow, what an accomplishment.
5 or 6 of those. So I do 2 things, Nicole. I'm a host, which I think is, it's obvious what a host does, right? But I'm also a producer, which means I pull together a story. I come up with a story idea, I pitch the story idea to my superiors, and they sign off on it. And then I work with a videographer to get the interviews. Well, first I do pre-interviews with the person, and then I go out with a videographer and we do the interviews. And I look through all the footage and I write the show. And that's what I want to say, is that all of us have stories. You have a story, Cole has a story, And there's always an opportunity, even if you're not going to go into journalism, to ask people about their stories. Okay, so we are in what's called the production control room here. And if this were fully staffed, you would have quite a few more people in here. When I'm on television or anyone else is, we have an earpiece in our ear. And that means we can hear the director, even several rooms away. And so he or she would be here, and they are talking to me and telling me how much time I might have left, and using the buttons over there to switch the camera angles. Also in this room at any given time might be a graphics person, so that's another job. And he or she would have already made up some maps or some statistics that we want to show on the screen. Also people's names, supers, we call those super titles under somebody's name or face. And so she or he would have made those up and would be punching them as the person came on board. If you're lucky, you have a producer or an associate producer also working with you who's keeping track of time, talking and bringing up the footage as necessary, telling the director what footage is next to come. Then there'd be an audio engineer back here who is making sure that the microphones are calibrated correctly, that we're not too soft, too loud. And when various people are talking, he or she pulls the mic down so that they don't conflict with each other. And then over in that far corner, you'd have maybe some videotape loaded into a machine, and when the producer called for it or the host called for it, that individual would press a button and that videotape would roll. It's not really videotape anymore, it's digitized. And finally, there's a lot that happens with encoding now, right? So streaming and encoding, that's another job. So in this little room, we have a lot of people generally now. Some of the other jobs at a TV station have to do with the actual equipment and our TV towers. The room we're in right now is the engineering room. These are the individuals who help fix our camera gear, and then some of them actually also go up, climb up the TV tower and make sure that everything is copacetic with that. And then they help keep the station on the air itself. So let's walk over here. So this is kind of the guts of a TV station. And we've got, all of these are servers. We are maintaining 5 different television streams at least because of digital. So we've got a kids channel, we've got a documentary channel, 2 different main channels. So a lot going on, a learn channel where, for cooking and sewing and things like that, painting. So all of that programming has to come down off the satellites, right, and get stored in servers.
I'm on for everything we put on the air. It's controlled by all these screens you see over here. Each one's a playlist, and it programs right on down all the programming through the day. We got to kind of keep an eye on that, make sure all our red events are taken care of. And then we just monitor all our stations throughout the state. We monitor Twin Falls, Pocatello, Moscow, and Coeur d'Alene.
California.
Plus we do the World Channel and the Kids Channel and the Create Channel.
As you can see, there are other jobs for TV station just to keep it on the air. Look at all this wiring underneath where I'm standing. There's more wiring. These are engineers who are trying to figure out a problem with one of our servers that has programming in it. And Andy, one of our engineers, he was at Boise State and came to us, I think, not that long after graduation, and he's been with us for quite a while. So there's lots of jobs behind the scenes at a TV station. So right now we're in what we call the tape library, and I love to take people here because actually you can tell a lot about history and the history of television. When we first started making television, it was on 1-inch tape or even larger. This is very old videotape, right? So not film, but video. And it was very big, right? We needed a big piece of tape to hold the information. Well, as time went on and on, the tapes got smaller, and that's why I say you can learn a lot about the history of television by looking just at the size of tapes. So when I started in television, I worked on 3/4 inch tape. So down from 1 inch to 3/4. Here's a 3/4 inch tape. Started going down in size like this, and then we went to HD, high definition. So this is an HD cam, smaller. Look at the difference, right? But still holding the same, if not more information. And now we're recording on chips, right? So right now we're in the largest of the studios at Idaho Public Television. We have 2 studios. This studio is used for our fundraising drive, and we call festival, and then also for doing certain programs. I do my program in here when it's on the air, and it looks like it's also set up maybe for the governor to come in and do like a press conference. The lights up here are a combination of incandescent lights, which of course can get rather warm, and fluorescent lights or videscents, which kind of were invented about, I don't know, 15 years ago. So if you are interested in a career in journalism, it's really important to not only be interested in people's stories, but be able to put yourself in situations where you're a bit uncomfortable, frankly, because we can't always do things in journalism that we want to do, right? We've got to go on stories sometimes that are really difficult. It's really, really important that you know how to research in this job. It's really important that you know how to use your primary sources and your secondary sources and understand what is real and what is fact-based, not rumor. So if you want to go into this profession, just know that there's a lot of research that goes into it because you are giving information to everyone else. They are trusting you to come up with good information. And then it is really important to read, to like reading, and to like writing. And to really be knowledgeable about your grammar because again, you are conveying information to people. But there are engineers and there are lots of other people who work in television behind the scenes, and they don't have to do all that research and everything. So but it's a career worth looking into.